Good evening and welcome to the rescheduled regular school board meeting. Thank you for those of you who were able to adjust and come on the new night. And since it's so lovely out tonight as well, for those of you who are in person, we appreciate you braving the cold. So we will start with the pledge. And Steely, you have some pledgers?
I do. I have Theo and I have Nora and Wyatt. Come on up. These are our ECLC celebrities. This way. This way. You got it.
Always like get that one.
Yes, we have preschool represented and we have kindergarten represented. Although Wyatt has went to our preschool as well, so he knows all about that. So I'm just going to share a few things, and I have to just, again, I'm always impressed that teachers always show up on this night to support their students. So look at you all, the lovelies, all the three of them here with their 3 students, which I think is pretty amazing. So Theo, this is for Mrs. Hammer, loves being at school with his friends. He's always engaged in the learning activities and he loves to participate in class. He shines as the leader during circle time and shows confidence when it's time to say the pledge. So get ready. Then we have Nora. Okay? And Nora is very kind-hearted. She is a very empathetic student. She takes very, very good care of her friends. She has a sense of really seeing when students might need a little extra TLC in the classroom and goes and supports those students who might be feeling shy or sad for whatever reason. She goes above and beyond for those classmates. She really is one of the best friends in the classroom, always willing to work cooperatively with everyone, and just is a great carer and listener to others. So well done, Nora. And then we have Wyatt, who is very inclusive and welcoming as well to those around him. So you can tell they're siblings, right? They've got that and been well nurtured in their home. And he's naturally considerate of others' feelings and likes to have really meaningful connections with his friends as well. He brings enthusiasm and energy into the classroom and always has a great attitude. He brings just a lot of light, smile, and personality, and he can turn anything into a song. And I got to witness that today. He and I were working together on some letters, and everything had a little like rap and a little hip hop and a little this action to it. So it just makes teaching fun as well. So these are our 3 ECLC superstars who will help lead with the Pledge of Allegiance. So put your hands on your heart. I'm just going to stand. You ready? You want to talk right in there? Yep. Ready? So I'll say 1, 2, 3, and then you guys can say I pledge. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Woohoo! Well done. We always get the cutest. No, it's all done here. I know.
Theo, we'll have a little something for you. A little flag bag. Nora. Ooh. And Wyatt.
What do you guys say?
Thank you.
Thank you. Such great superstars. But some of you have siblings here.
Yeah, Theo does.
Theo,
Do you want to get a pin?
you got a pin for
Mabel
you?
and Jackie? That'd be so special to share with them.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. You guys did a great job.
Youngest looks just like her.
You're welcome to stay, or you, or if you're not.
Can't beat it.
Yeah, well done. Phew! Remember the last time? Couldn't make it through the door.
All right.
Sure to not put any sort of shy child. You learned that from last time?
All right. So, approval of agenda. We have some changes to the agenda.
So where do we put it?
So, our high school representative with the date change is not able to make it. because his schedule also changed. And we will not be needing a non-public December 15th, so.
Make a motion to amend the agenda adopt the agenda as amended. Don't ask me to try that again.
All right. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So approval of minutes, public and non.
I'll make the motion to approve the November 17th public and non-public minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion?
Nope.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we're at, look how quickly we got to the math update.
I do want to, because of our date change, I just want to remind people that they had other commitments, teaching and otherwise, in the evening, so they're going to present and maybe as quickly as is appropriate and comfortable for folks.
All right, so I will get started. And just wanted to do kind of a math implementation update. So just as a reminder, we're in year 3 of the curriculum, so both the Reveal and the Ready Math. And so when you look at kind of curriculum implementation, according to implementation science, year 3 is the year that you're supposed to see those measurable results. When you look at curriculum, so teachers have gotten familiar with the methodology, kind of with the sequence, they've made some adjustments. And so the plan and the hope is that this year is kind of that year where we'll start to see those measurable results that we're looking at. All right, next one, Mike. So just kind of as a stage setter and reminder, we are not alone in this world of our math scores dipping. So for the past 12 years, according to NAEP, we have math scores dipping all over the country, in the state, and then certainly here as well. So this is actually a new report that came out in September by the Center for Reinventing Public Information. And I really like their quote. It says, "It's a complex but solvable crisis, since math performance tends to be highly responsive to what happens inside school walls, unlike other subjects such as reading." And so just that kind of reminder that a lot of reading influence happens in the home and the language that they're around, and math we do generally have a lot more control over in the classroom, and so that's kind of a positive piece for us. The other part of the quote is that math is ruthlessly cumulative, where gaps in early years tend to compound years later. And so we see that challenge here in K through 8, that we do see gaps grow over time. So we have smaller gaps in K, and by the time we get up to 8, we have larger gaps, and by the time students move into high school, those gaps widen. All right, so next one.
Can I just ask you, Emily,
Sure.
why it's California?
That's just where they did the study because of the large number of students. So they took the NAEP scores as a nation and then from California. So the nation is the blue and then California just as a whole state is red. So that was just the focus of their particular study. It's just kind of nationwide, but California as a state focus. So just thinking about other districts as well as so places that we send students, and then also places that have similar kind of K through 8 programs to us. So these are our math SAS scores for the past 3 years, and Barrington is in the black, so sort of squarely in the middle there. And so the first comparison that I did is the solid lines for Dover, Northwood, and Oyster River. So just thinking about Co-Brown and the 2 high schools for Oyster River and for Dover. And looking at those numbers, I will point out that those include 11th grade as well. So it's that 3 through 8 SAS plus the 11th SAT, which is why I made them solid, because they don't represent just that 3 through 8 band. And then I also put the state of New Hampshire in there. So we have been slightly above the state of New Hampshire, and we are now pretty even with kind of where that was in this past year. Then I also pulled just some K through 8 districts that would have maybe a similar kind of population and curriculum to us, and you can see that those do have some differences. So we have Nottingham, we talked about last month with their ELA, their math scores are also very high, very similar to Oyster River's. And then we have Henniker. Color isn't so great in that, but it's kind of the second one up. So they had a dip, and now we're similar to them as of last year. And then Alton, K through 8, kind of down there at the bottom. So certainly not where we want to be, but relatively, we're in the middle of kind of that comparison. All right, I think that's it for that one. And then I did focus really on middle school, because I know there's been questions about just kind of middle school instruction and the gaps that we have at middle school. And so it's also easier to compare with state numbers just because of the available data for middle school. So if we look at kind of 4 years of our SAS data compared with 6 through 8, the blue is the 6th grade. So in the past, we've been pretty far above the state average, and that really has declined in the last year to be kind of level with the state data. 7th grade is the black, also been higher than the state for 3 years, and then last year dipped below that state number. And then 8th grade is the red, sort of a steady increase. We were below the state in 22 and 23, and then we're above in 24 and 25. Also, just a reminder that at that 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, when we look at our SAS information, we did not have great participation, and so it doesn't necessarily represent all of our students when we look at these numbers. And then this slide I had showed last month, but just wanted to pull it up again in looking specifically just at our 8th graders. And so the bottom cluster includes Barrington, State of New Hampshire, Dover, and Northwood just for 8th grade, and then Oyster River, which is that outlier. I also did, I don't have it up here, but I did reach out to all 3 high schools just to ask if they have seen any change this year in 9th graders coming in. And Co-Brown said no change, just collectively from wherever students are from. I didn't hear back from Oyster River. Dover sent me the numbers for Q1 grades, and I kind of looked at those for CP Algebra, which is the college prep algebra level. And there's a slight increase in the average there in Q1. There was an average of 77% in 2024, and it's 81% in 2025, so slightly higher, but I don't know if that's anything significant to look at. All right, so then I'm going to move into iReady just because that's the one that we have a lot more control over as far as participation and numbers of students who are taking that. So again, I've got the 5th grade is that solid blue line, 6th grade is the dotted blue line, 7th grade is the red line, and 8th grade is the black line. And so this information is based on cohorts. So if you look at the 8th graders in 2025, if you look at 2024, they were 7th graders, but it's the same students. If you look at 2023, they were 6th graders, same students, and then 5th graders. So it just looks at that group over time. And so we generally see an increase for 3 of the grades, except for our 8th graders at the beginning of this year achieved lower, and we know that there were some instructional challenges last year, so that is not surprising, but obviously we don't want to see that. We would like to see that similar to the other 3 grades. The other thing too is just that a reminder that our mid-year results are coming up for iReady. And so this is the first time really for all grades that we're using that program as designed to be at least that 30 minutes for their personalized path for ELA and math. So I'll be excited to kind of come back and see what those mid-year results tell us as well, since we've had quite a bit of instruction since that. Action items for MTSSSA, one of my goals as part of that is to do 50 math-focused curriculum walkthroughs throughout the year. So when I wrote this, I had done 15, but it's now been an extra couple days, so I've now done 18 of those 50, and then 7 of those have been with the principals. So just kind of walking into those K through 8 math classrooms. And I will say that, with 18, I have a taste. I certainly wouldn't say that I have a full understanding, but I do feel like a place that we can grow and that I have noticed. So these are 8 mathematical practices, so the how we teach. So we have the curriculum for what we teach, and then the way that we teach math. We know that we have some high leverage strategies that we can use. And one that I've kind of identified across the board that I do not see enough of is this mathematical discourse. So kind of training students to talk about math and to talk about problem solving in small groups and in large groups and think about that in more of a problem solving way. I see it in certain classrooms, but I don't see it necessarily across the board. And so that's something that I would like to work with teachers on focusing on and just kind of how to facilitate those conversations. So it's not just kind of doing problems, right, and getting answers, but it's really having a conversation about how did that work? How did you solve that problem? Why did we get this wrong? What else could we do here to make this work? So that's kind of a recommendation that I'm making. We'll be working with schools and principals to increase that practice as we continue with the curriculum. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth for some specific focus on 8th grade.
Kind of awkward,
Yes?
All right, so next slide, Mike. Thank you. All right, so I took over as principal last year, and some of the first actions I took were to address math, because as we've talked about as a leadership team at school board retreats, like math is an issue across the district. So we immediately started addressing some of those needs. The first thing I did was we reorganized Success Block. I felt like that was a block of time in the day that we could really capitalize. And so we focused in on all students getting math and working on math in some way. And Mr. Fortier and I got a lot of pushback, and we kind of had to work with the staff and get everyone on board. And, you know, we saw the beginning of the year data this year go up. And I think that part of that is because of that math-focused time. We did work last year with Oyster River specifically to reorganize our 8th grade math curriculum to better prepare our students to go off to high school. So we started doing a placement test halfway through the year that we give to students to make sure that they're, you know, going into the right levels. And all 3 high schools ask us for those placement recommendations based on that. And our math teacher reorganized her curriculum and her scope and sequence based on that. All set, Mike, thanks. This year, we knew math was going to continue to be a struggle again in all 4 grades. So I made some of my own personal goals focused on math. So we are doing several full math pull-out days for the math department to work collaboratively together to talk about their scope and sequence, to talk about their instructional practices, and to talk about where students are at the end of the year to make sure teachers are picking up in the right places. Our next math pull-out day happens to be this Tuesday. Ms. Sherman and I will be there, and we'll be working closely for part of the day with a consultant from the Department of Education who's going to work with us on Data Studio and integrating some of those assessments into practice in the classrooms to better inform our instruction and also to better prepare students for the SAS assessment toward the end of the year. Additionally, Mr. Boardman and I are meeting in a few weeks to plan a vertical alignment with Ms. Sherman, to plan a vertical alignment meeting between the 2 buildings, meeting their homework. They're not getting that extra practice that we know that they need. If a student isn't completing all of their assignments, they're not getting that knowledge they need, and that's going to lead to gaps and make it harder for students for sure. So it's important to note we all have to work on this collaboratively. Students have to be doing the work, teachers have to be supporting the students, parents supporting at home as well. And we're in that first year of that curriculum redesign that the 8th grade math teacher did. And so we used to start with geometry, which students found a little bit more easy than some of the other things. This year we started with equations because students need that throughout the year, and that was more difficult. So we definitely did see some more struggle there. But again, that aligns with what they're going to need for high school more effectively. And I think it's important to note, too, that I have 4 teachers in math who show up every day for 400 students, which is very different than some of the other subjects compared to the number of teachers and other supports we have for students in things like ELA and reading. All right. So as we've said, this is a district-wide problem. It's a nationwide problem. We know it's a school problem as well, which is why we have several universal supports that any student can access, including students who are successful. Every math teacher offers extra help during the day. It is during lunch or recess, so I know that, you know, you have to balance that social time, but every math teacher offers help throughout the week during their lunch or during students' recess to have them reassess, to have them get extra practice, whatever it is they need. All students have access to extended studies at the end of the day as well, where they can go and get help on their homework or just a quiet space. We've implemented the changes with Success Block, and then we also have some other just kind of general supports. Students can practice on My Path for math whenever they feel like it. Additionally, this year we have Khan Academy. It's also known as Khan Amigo that students can log on. They can use their Clever to log on to and get similarly personalized instruction, as well as some other, sort of general supports that we've shared with families. So in closing, we know it's a problem. We talk about it with the leadership team. We talk about it with the school board. We're working with our teachers, and we are working on it every day. But it's a slow fix. It's not something that's just going to be fixed overnight.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for making the time to come tonight when we had to switch.
No worries.
Elizabeth, so you said we know you have 4 teachers, 400 students. You don't have the other people that other subjects do. We've talked about that, right? Like math interventionists can't find someone. That's always the hardest part. If somebody fell out of the sky, would we be prepared to offer somebody that, from a budgetary standpoint too?
So we held on to that position in the budget for 2 years.
Yeah.
And then last year during the budget process, we were like, okay, we have this position, we can't fill it. We have other needs. What are the other identified needs in the building that we may be able to actually find an appropriately certified, experienced teacher? And so one of the pieces that we had heard is from our receiving high schools was, wow, we as a system, an educational system, I think we all come to the table thinking our kids are proficient in technology now because they are being raised with it. But we've noticed some gaps in kind of some of those fundamental skills. So we did make the decision last year to put a computer class back into the middle school as a regular rotation. They were just getting it in 5th grade. And then we were hearing that some of those skills, like how do you manipulate an Excel spreadsheet, or just, we think they're simple things because we as the old people in the room actually know how to use them. But the way kids use technology, we were seeing those gaps with how is it going to look when they're out in the workplace, and so we made that decision last year to fill that in that way. So we have talked in this current budget process around a little bit of a declining enrollment. How do we manage positions? We don't want to let educators go in this tough hiring climate. Can we try to repurpose, keep a position, look for math interventionists, and unless they start coming from the sky or vending machines, it is. I've been in education for 30 years now, and I think there's many of us around the table who have been and will. Math has been on the critical shortage area since I was an early 20-year-old teacher, and it's just has become more challenging. So unless you find a true math interventionist, math specialist, you need a level of expertise to then bring to your teachers. Otherwise, your teachers are more knowledgeable than the person you're bringing in. So it's not a role that that you can do a site-based learning plan and sort of grow into. You need some really solid discourse around numeracy and understanding of numeracy in order to do that job, and we just haven't been able to find anybody. We have people internally that have been interested, and I've had to unfortunately say to them, I need you in the classroom, because who else is going to teach those 100 students at that particular grade level? So we would love it, just a challenge.
So we're up to public comment. If you have a copy of the agenda, you have the rules. You just state your name
Yes.
and
Do I have to come up, or can I just?
well, the public online won't be able to hear you if you're not at the microphone.
You can sit at the table if that's more
It
comfortable.
makes you more comfortable sit where.
Yeah.
I'm like, just stand above you.
Okay, you can sit. That's fine.
Just fold your name tag down so it.
There we go.
Okay.
So, good evening, everyone. My name's Jess Fuller. I live at 171 Breezy Way here in Barrington. I have 3 kids in the district, a 4th grader, an 8th grader, and then I have a toddler who will be at the ECLC next year. Coming on behalf of multiple parents for the class of 2030. In my professional life, I'm a director of analytics at a financial firm. So I tend to look at data every day, day in, day out, and so the math performance and the data in the district is quite concerning to me, but also many other parents, and not just the data, but just how we've all been feeling. I know that the school board also has been talking about it, so I know that it's all known, but we wanted to get our voices heard from the board. So using the New Hampshire Department of Education's iPlatform, the most recent data was for last year, and I think it's taken in the spring. But the middle school's math proficiency was 41%, as we just saw, which means that less than half of our students in 8th grade are proficient in math. But specifically looking at the 8th grade cohort for the NHDOE, tracked over time, our 5th grade, when they were in 5th grade at the time, they were at 52%. And then the following year, they dropped to 45%, and it's been flatlined like that for the past couple of years. We obviously won't have this year's data until the end of the year, but it just suggests that they're not building upon their skills year over year. That's how we've all been feeling. They just feel underprepared, they're lacking confidence, and it really lines up with what we're all seeing at home. The kids are working hard, but they're behind or overwhelmed. And when we compare to our neighboring district in Oyster River, they are at 65%, so well above Barrington. But one data point that really stood out to me is teacher certification. At BMS, only 75% of our educators are certified in the subject that they teach as of last year. Oyster River, that is 96%. And our 75% in Barrington is also well below the state. And for the current 8th grade cohort at BMS, the only teacher certified in math who's taught them is the current year teacher. And so we won't have those results yet, so I can't speak to that. I will say that another certified math teacher was added to the 7th grade team, which I appreciate. I see it as a step in the right direction, but we as parents feel frustrated that there's been multiple years with gaps in consistent access to certified math instruction. And then in addition to the data, I just wanted to call out why we came here and wanted to get our voices heard. I put a simple question on the class of 2030 parent group and just said, how is math going this year? Really basic. I expected a ton of feedback, both good and bad, but what I didn't expect is 86 comments from 30 families feeling really frustrated about math. That makes up about a third of our class. The concerns weren't just limited to this year, but just ongoing struggles across middle school. I won't read them all, but one comment captured the tone that many shared, and it was, I've never felt supported when kids are struggling with a subject at BMS. I've had multiple kids through the school district and have always felt this way. Our kids that are struggling are suffering consequences like being suspended from sports teams versus having an advocate wanting them to succeed, and we need better resources. So it's not just numbers. We're all asking for help, and we're just feeling super discouraged. So I would urge the board to please prioritize math teacher certification, whether that's through professional development, budgeting, resources, and again, I know we've just talked about it, but a math interventionist would be great. If you find one, if we could put it in the budget, it would be awesome. And lastly, I am super thankful for all the teachers. I know it's a lot of work, but we just want our kids to succeed, and we want Barrington to succeed. That's it.
Thank you. I will share that, we as a board want our kids to start, and, we have been concerned about math. That's why we spent quite a bit of money and adopted a new math program.
Yeah.
That if you heard, Curriculum Corps say, this is supposed to be kind of the golden year where hopefully we will see that growth, and unfortunately we won't see it and be able to know it at the end of the year. But hopefully we'll see some growth with, particularly because we're most concerned about the 8th grade students from their beginning of the year, because certainly we're not happy with that.
Yeah.
But hopefully we'll see that growth with the other things that are put in place. We always strive, and our goal is to always have certified educators. We just sometimes don't, and we need an adult in the room. And so I can tell you, I am in education in another district, and I've been in education a long time because, as I've said, I'm old. But it used to be, you would get stacks of applications for teaching, and it just doesn't happen anymore. It really is. It's not a profession people are choosing to go into, and it's a profession people are leaving in droves, and it's unfortunate. And we got new software to try and attract more candidates, more nationally and things. Some of it we're driven by candidates who are available in the area, and I know that doesn't feel good. But please know that we as a district are trying to do everything we can to have quality instructors in front of our students, because that's why we're all on the board. That's what we want.
Yep.
So.
If you have any math friends,
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
send them our way.
Sounds like you have a math brain.
But do you have a bachelor's degree? Because we can get you there.
Masters, yes.
Well, then see?
Send your friends, yeah.
But we will continue to work on it.
Thank you.
Anything else from the public in person? Anything online? See, I'm old. I cannot see those little hands. I don't see any hands raised. Okay, so moving on. There is another opportunity for public comment later in the agenda as well.
Do we have Scott online?
I don't see a Scott, but no. Is Sarah Camus the other budget? So she's online.
Okay.
I don't know if she wants to speak.
So I guess, if Sarah, if you are comfortable, please toss your questions our way. I know we had a budget committee member who's been a longstanding one, had a concern with a family member so she couldn't be here tonight. If you would rather have some comfort in numbers, Sarah, feel free to correspond with your members, and then you can certainly email questions to me and we can get those back to you, or if you have particular input, we are open and ready for it.
We can certainly talk about it at our next meeting as
Yep.
well. So, there are two approaches when you're having inclement weather. Some committees chose to just cancel their meetings. We chose to try and reschedule to some, there's pluses and minuses to all of them. Tonight when I walked out of my house and hit that wind, I was like, oh, well, I would have
What are we
preferred
doing?
just stay
Others
home.
would have driven in the snow though too, so I appreciate not doing
Yeah,
that.
I would not have wanted to do that. All right, but, so Sarah is
Never know.
still, I don't see her hand up, so
She's looking for some comfort in numbers. I don't blame her.
okay. All right, so we're gonna move on to correspondence.
So you have a letter of correspondence in front of you from Miss Samantha Lister, first grade teacher, who is requesting a 1-year leave of absence for the 26-27 school year with the intent of returning in 27-28.
I'd like to congratulate Ms. Lister and make a motion to approve her 1-year leave of absence.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Who's hoping for a certified teacher?
Yes.
All right. But we do wish her well. Enjoy that time home. Superintendent's report.
All right, so a lot of what's in my report is part of policy as well, so I'm going to leave the policy stuff for when we get to that. It looks as though I might just be leading right from my, oh no, Laura will speak in between me, so I'll leave policy for policy time. We've been on this sort of theme of hiring being a struggle, so I'll just add to that. I would say this has been the most significant year as far as substitutes have been an issue for many years, right? We used to have a nice list of them, and they just keep dwindling, a lot of times because we hire them. But we are really struggling with paraprofessional openings. I think, some people come and try it out, and then they're like, whoa, I didn't know that's what this was all about, and then they don't stick around. But, we have had some resignations for reasons that had nothing to do with the job or the school, just changes in, living or family situations or what have you. And some of it isn't just openings that are newly created positions, needs based on move-ins and things of that nature. So we keep brainstorming and trying to get creative around how to fill those positions, but certainly that is our greatest area of need currently. We have been able to fill with appropriately certified staff an opening that we had at the elementary school, and then also some maternity leaves. So that is good news. So a little positive, a little negative there. Financially, for the current budget year, we remain in solid shape. Unlike last year that felt a little tentative early on, but Vicki will provide a detailed financial update at the next meeting, but we feel good about where we are there, despite our school care reassessment bill that we needed to pay, so that's good news. One piece that I was just made aware of today that I wanted to add to my report, because you're likely to see the notices. And we've had a lot of conversation around the wells at BMS and the arsenic levels. So we did, your numbers are based off of a 4-month average. And so we just got a report back saying you're not in compliance, but that's because our 4-month average is based on numbers when the 3 wells were still open. So the public notice, we're required to have it out there, but I just wanted to be very transparent that it's not because right now currently the 2 wells that are in use that the arsenic is over the charts. It is within the allowable. I mean, everybody who has a well across New Hampshire, this is a common, it's not an unusual issue. We've talked about that in the past, but Joe Williams has a email and a call out to the state right now to say, hey, we need you to recalibrate this, or please come out and take another sample so you have that additional sample before we ring the alarm bell and saying we have to come back to the table to talk about that again. So we're asking for an additional sample because it's based on a combination of 3 wells and 2 wells being measured. So that felt like important news to share with everybody tonight. Committees, a couple of quick updates there. In policy committee, we talked primarily in this last meeting about the early retirement incentive plan policy, procedure, and application process, which we will get to later in the meeting. And that is pretty common practice in some districts. I think it was been done here in many, many moons ago. But part of the reason why you do that is sort of the situation that we're facing this year, where we have a slight enrollment decline. And for us right now, predicted we're 33 students less in the elementary school for next year, which is essentially 2 classrooms. And so, especially given the hiring struggle, you don't want to be in a position to take new educators and say you no longer have a job and push them to other districts. So what you do sometimes is try to offer an incentive to those people who are sort of on the cusp. I don't know if I'm ready to retire yet or not, but they are retirement eligible, age eligible, etc. So that is on the table today for later on policy. And we also spent quite a bit of time on age appropriate education, retention, and promotion. We don't tend to get a lot of those requests in general. A couple a year, I would say. We haven't looked at those policies in quite a while, and so we're going to save that until after the budget process, more into the spring, when we can sit down, the building principals and policy committee, and just really talk through what we're seeing. So things like, my child just barely missed the cutoff for kindergarten, can they still come? So that kind of thing. Or my kiddo tested really high, can they not be in first grade, and can we put them to kindergarten, can we put them into first? So because school ages in New Hampshire isn't until 6 years old, we don't have policy on the can you come early. We do have policy on testing into first grade early. So we just thought there's enough question around it that it would warrant some time around the table to talk through some of those policies. So we're going to table that to a little bit later. And then we spent the rest of our time talking about the wellness policy, which has been a hot topic for many years around the state of New Hampshire. So we had a food service audit last year and had a few findings, nothing major, which good constructive feedback is always welcome, and so we make some corrections. One of the areas, though, as soon as you, of course, accept federal funds, there's certain procedures and practices that you have to follow. So we had, in the past, weren't as strict with some of the wellness recommendations, and we're finding through the audit process last year that National School Lunch Program and the Department of Ed is like, we really need you to tighten it down. So we're going to have to look at ensuring that we have goals in each building around something wellness related. We decided to, start somewhat easy and have drinking water be a goal this year for students and staff. But also looking at, the removal of recess for discipline. We can't do that. That's a pretty controversial topic for some. And then also being very aware of what we're bringing in for whole group or classroom celebrations, and just being very aware of the number of sweet treats and such, and not using food as rewards. We generally speaking, I don't think it's a secret that we have a obese nation, and we need to do the best that we can to monitor and model that. So it's not always a super popular decision, but keeping in line with the policy committee's goal of, New Hampshire School Boards Association has attorneys that dig into this, and we've really tried to stick with their recommended policies as our practice. So that is there, and look, I'll have less to say later. Let's see, our town collaborative meeting unfortunately got canceled. The last scheduled one, what was on the agenda was the flashing school beacon signs, collaborative health insurance. I jokingly said to Connor when I saw him last night, I'm pretty sure you're not interested in collaborating anymore since our percent increase was so high. But we're keeping our options open. We're still looking at other, at Health Trust, and hoping that rates come in a little differently, and we'll see how that plays out. And then also to have a conversation about an SRO. So we will look to get that rescheduled. Quick update on district and school-wide goals. The kindergarten team just visited Exeter to watch how they implement iReady, because it's a challenge to get 5-year-olds to independently engage in that. So I think they came back with some great information and some good ideas on how to make that go a little more smoothly. They do a walk to math approach, which I've always heard it as a walk to reading. Pick up your book bin and go to another classroom, and they do that with math as well. So that team came away with some tips and tricks, I guess, to help support that. It's been a little challenging to corral the littles to get them on my path independently. Speaking of MyPath, we are seeing trends in the right direction there as far as usage, and what I'm finding is it's less about we want you on iReady and MyPath, and more about shifting our focus and our thinking around what does our week look like as a grade level team? Are we going on a field trip? Do we have a school-wide assembly? But always ensuring that ELA and math are at the forefront. That needs to be the priority. So even though the master schedule may say this, if your period, you're missing math or ELA, let's be flexible and think about another time of the day that we can do that so that we're not missing that instruction. So just continuing to focus in and tighten down on some of those priorities. And health insurance update, lost my place. We did, when we met last time, I told you we had a meeting coming up with our school care rep. So Vicki and I did meet with her. We were able to verify with her that the rates are reviewed annually, so we shouldn't have that fear and or concern that this 35% increase is going to then stay and just grow from there. That usage gets reviewed each year, and then she reviewed our just our district results. And interestingly, we just sometimes things happen, and so we've had quite a few staff members that they consider, they categorize them as catastrophic, meaning their claim totals exceeded $100,000. And, you know, unfortunately, we've had some people fall in those categories. Thankfully, they had the health insurance to support them and their families. It just is, it is what it is. Also, increases in prescriptions and intravenous treatments were also higher for us than in other years. So it was also shared that our claims 2 years ago demanded a more significant rate increase, but the risk pool was healthy. And so they were able to spread the increase of some districts over the whole pool, which is the purpose of a risk pool. Too many districts needed the support of the risk pool, and it has caught up with them and us. So that's why our rates went up to the degree that they did. So arguably, instead of being at our 12.4, where I got that from, instead of being at the 12.4 that we were at from last year, she said it probably should have been more like 17, but they were trying to keep things flat for people. They rolled the dice and they got some snake eyes. So here we are with our 34.8% increase. Legislatively across the state, a couple of areas that we need to continue to monitor that seem to be getting a little bit of traction. Mandated tax caps is still getting a lot of energy in Concord. Open enrollment and SAU consolidation. So for people that, I know we probably don't have a lot of people online, but hopefully people will encourage others to listen to this portion, because I think it's going to take families to say, you know, we want the support locally. Right now the proposal is consolidating down to 12 superintendents and taking a lot of those responsibilities and putting them on principals and school boards. And then there would be one person for the county who would be elected, who would turn over every 2 years. So
If you found someone who was going to run to be superintendent.
if you found somebody who was going to run. So with no certification, no background in education necessarily needed.
For sure, but not
I'll be
to
running
the
from the
position.
board.
They're running
Yeah.
from the position.
One term and done.
And when we look at other states who have done this, it has backfired on them. So New York is a great example. They implemented that type of a system, and basically what happened was they have these county level superintendents, and then locally they also have superintendents, and so now you're actually paying more. I did hear a little encouraging piece today. We don't really know until the bill gets actually written and put forward, but right now the feeling is that if the consolidation were to go through, that local districts could still choose to have their own, they just don't have to. So that at least there's not the definitive, like, this is the way it's gonna be rule. Knowing New Hampshire as well as I do, having been raised here, you know, we really pride ourselves in our local control, and communities are very different. And so I suspect that if that remains that way, that a lot of communities will just continue to do things the way
Will you have
they
to
have
opt
been.
in or opt out, or is it, how would
Of the
they-
consolidation.
Yeah.
If it goes forward and passes, it will happen, but you can, you know, your budgets are your own, so you can still choose to have a position in there.
But that's, I guess.
Then you're
that's
also contributing to the county.
Right. You'd have to contribute your portion. Yeah, so they think it's financially going to make huge differences. Part of it is they're looking at how the administrative costs have increased over the years over the state, but that is because they have approved the financial stability of the SAUs who have pulled apart, which is fascinating, right? Like, they approved them. So we went from, just in a dozen years or so, we went from 80-something SAUs to 107. So, but there's a very strict process and timeline in order to be able to do that. You can't just decide, oh, we want to break away. There has to be a study that you're not going to damage the other towns that are within your district, and it has to be approved by the department. We went through it years ago now.
When we had 25 or 26, I think when I was on 25 years ago, they had just, yeah. 'cause,
When Barrington broke off from
yes.
44.
Yeah, because, what's his name was the first superintendent we hired.
John
Right?
Freeman.
Huh?
John Freeman,
John
Oh.
Freeman, yes.
1996.
Wow.
Fault.
Ish. Yeah.
You want to teach math?
I think more history might be a better subject. I will say that for those online and people who might want to share with friends, when the exploratory committee was meeting, I tried to speak and wasn't able to speak, so I did speak with the chair of that committee. It felt to me that his decision was already made, and that, I expressed that I was not in support of that. I think if we look at our county, I have nothing against Dover and Rochester, but they're much bigger communities, and they will overwhelm Stratford County, and I don't believe our needs would be met. I also don't think that, someone could handle the transportation of all of Stratford County. Like that, and what they thought could be passed on to school boards. And I highly respect my colleagues on the school board, but I also think, you need people who are actually in education to help guide some of those decisions and things like that. And what they were going to be expecting of building level principals, I thought was unreasonable in this day and age. I specifically asked the gentleman, when was the last time you were physically in a school? We've had conversations here in Barrington, and it's, if you go on any of your, social media, you hear people talking about the behaviors in school, and it's like, well, yes, let's throw more on the principal's plates because they're not busy enough. So I would encourage people to follow that, and, if you're so inclined, to express that,
That was the,
local voters have a lot to say as it is now.
They're not going to listen to me because they're going to view it as I'm trying to save my job, right? They don't want to hear from me. And thank you for sharing that, because I didn't want to be like, well, Moira, talk to them. So I was at
45 minutes.
I was at a regional superintendent's meeting this morning, and we were talking about this very topic as well as open enrollment. And that is the sentiment from the entire room, that people have tried to reach out and have tried to have conversations, and the committee is not open to
when
hearing
we
it.
left 44, the primary reason that the school district wanted to leave was that we were actually spending the lion's share of Barrington was spending more money, sending more money to 44, but we were getting the exact same representation as everybody else. So Barrington was putting more money into the pot, but when it came time to sit down in the room and say, we want this for Barrington, well, you needed the other SAU members, board members, to agree that Barrington should do that. And that was really the primary, Barrington was just being discouraged about the fact that they were spending, if they were going to spend all that money and didn't have any more to say in of their own destiny. So that's really what encouraged Barrington the taxpayers in Barrington to agree to form their own SAU.
Well, and I think that's a similar sentiment to all of the SAU divorces that have happened in the last 27 years. So some of them have not been pretty.
Great big giant step backwards is what it sounds like.
Yeah, agreed. And that's if you put more on the principals, they're already taxed. You're just going to turn around and having to hire more building level administration. So you're just trading one title for another. They can't do it all. It's just, we hired a position recently to try to take some burden off already. So I just don't see how that's working. But really the feeling in the field right now is that we need families to come forward, because they're not, they had the group, right, with only select board members could actually go and speak, and the ones who tried to be heard didn't feel as though they were heard.
I mean, I will say I appreciate the chair reached out so he could have that conversation with me, but he's like, oh, I thought you might have something different to say. So that's what gave me the impression that maybe he had already decided, which was unfortunate. And, you know, they're basing it on things that happened in Mississippi, and I was like, yeah, New Hampshire is ranked number 5 in the nation. Like, why, you know, if we want to compare ourselves to 1 through 4, I mean, there's room for growth. There always is room for growth. We've talked about math, there's room for growth. But, like, I don't think that Mississippi is the state I want to emulate for our education at this moment.
The states who have things organized at the county level, with a couple of exceptions, the rest of them, I think there's 2 exceptions, the rest of them are in the bottom quarter of performing in the nation.
We'll see when the bill actually gets written.
Yeah, we're following about a little over 200 bills right now in my spare time.
Anything else from your report, Deanna?
Nope, I just saw a little side note that I forgot to mention when I was talking about the financial piece. Katie keeps getting emails and phone calls. We can talk about it more at the next meeting because it'll give her a couple more weeks and she may know more, but we may have a move-in or 2 that may cause a substantial impact. So until there's an address in town, you can't crystal ball it, but it's just like, what are we doing here? Because it always gets a little touchy when we're at the point where we're trying to finalize the budget. So just, we do get a lot of inquiries. I mean, we have our struggles, but we are a great school system to be in, and people move to the community for that reason. So we get a lot of people trying to move to town, which is why there's a lot of energy around open enrollment, because there's some neighboring town folks who would love to bring their kiddos here. So if I get more information on open enrollment, other than what we've shared so far, I will bring that forward as well. But that is status quo right now. Some people are putting warrants out to kind of preempt the legislative process, but your warrant to either send or receive out of district kids does not supersede what the state's going to do. So to me, we just sit tight and wait and see what the legislation says.
Anything else?
No. Sorry.
So Ms. Dealey, some good news,
More
please.
good news.
I have all good news. And I was just,
Thank goodness.
actually, as Deanna is talking, I'm so glad she does that work and not me. But I'm in the trenches and with the kids and with the teachers and
Rapping to letters.
rapping with students and just, it's such a joyful and fun place to be, especially in December, where there's a lot of talk about elves and, lights, and you hear a lot about what's going on in their homes this time of year. Though my message today that went out in my newsletter was, stick to the routines, make life predictable, don't make the children overly tired, make sure you're still feeding them on a regular basis, because it's like there's so many expectations around the holidays, and that can be hard for everyone, but especially I think little people sometimes really feel that impact. So, and in that message is also that at the ECLC we're sticking to routines, we're sticking to what we do, because we have a lot of great work to do to keep kids learning and growing. So attendance this year is really good. Kids are showing up, and I just have to thank, I think that the parents of the students we have this year have just done some great work to prepare their kids to be at school and to be learners. So that's amazing. In terms of learning, as the reading interventionist, it's cycle 2, so I'm currently seeing 15 students and working on really first sound fluency still and segmenting sounds. I will do progress monitoring next week, maybe the middle of the cycle, see how students are doing, and shift groups as need be, depending on the focus for instruction. In math, I was really excited. The kindergarten team, we worked together because we have an intern from SNU. We got access to some grants that we haven't seen in the past. So They worked and applied for a math grant and were granted $1,500 to buy materials. So they were in the process of ordering those and just some different things, just scales and just these really interesting trays, good old abacus, things like that, that will all be outside. So the math for, this is preschool, their standards really lead to some nice outdoor learning. So they'll be doing math outside and then bringing, the hope is that learning then comes into the classroom as they, work on counting objects up to 10, identifying and sorting shapes, measuring, using scales, and really with the emphasis on increasing their math vocabulary, greater than, less than, bigger, smaller, just all those great vocab words. So that's exciting. And then in math in kindergarten, again, as Emily said, it's year 3 of Reveal. Reveal is hard in kindergarten. It's not super play-based. There aren't a lot of games, so the teachers have worked really hard to make it developmentally appropriate for our students. And what we're doing now is really trying to align. So the end of the unit, we have essential standards. So we have 5 standards that we guarantee these, our kindergartners are going to all have these standards by the end. We're going to teach all of them, but these ones we've said we guarantee. We're trying to align those standards with the end of the unit assessments because they really don't. So we're trying to work through that and maybe looking at repacing, so flip-flopping some units around. So that's some work that's happening in kindergarten now in terms of math, and then the implementation of the MyPath, that iReady program, and having students be on that for 30 minutes a week, which again doesn't sound like much, but the struggle is that kindergartners are not very independent with it. So when you have 2 people in the room, so you're trying to do, you have 4 stations, a teacher's working with students at one station trying to do direct instruction, maybe, on the assessment shows they're struggling, I need to work with them. The paraprofessional is also working with a small group of students, and then you would hope that the others could kind of work independently on iReady. That would be the dream, but that's not quite what we're seeing yet. And it's hard when they're stuck and don't understand what they need to do. If they, I sat with a student who needed to do some sounding, some word recognition or some sound recognition. So it was like, ick and ack, and the kiddo had no idea, and it's like, so they're like, I don't know, right? So what they do when they don't know is they raise their hand because they want to get it right and get help, but those teachers are trying to do the small group instruction, so it's just, it's tricky, and the technology's been a challenge too. So they have the touch screens, but they're older, and the touch screens, the sensitivity's not working. So, like on a lot of the questions, they have to. So they might have maybe like 5, say, leaves at the top of the screen, and the numbers 1 through 5 at the bottom, and they have to touch 1, and then they can try to drag it to the top, and that's not working. So now they're actually using the touchpad. So they're pressing it, and then trying to get it to go up using the keypad, and they get it like halfway up, and the thing drops down. So there's some frustration around the technology that we're working with. So we just Emily's been working with us, and we've just ordered some mice to see if maybe kindergartners can manage that, but we'll see. In Exeter, they're using iPads, and it was pretty smooth, but that's a lot of money, so something we have to work through. Then I just on there, I showed kindergarten. Our preschool has been working for a couple of years. It's been kind of one of those. I don't know why it was so hard, but it was to really nail down a report card for preschool. We got feedback that parents wanted more information about how their students were doing. So finally, they've created. I think the reason is they wanted it to be perfect, and so and that's hard. And getting agreement on those standards and whatnot. But anyway, we now have a report card, and they were previewed during conferences, and parents were really pleased because it just kind of anchored the conversation. just hiring, I was gonna just mention that we are actually fully staffed as of like today.
A couple hours ago.
Yeah, which is really exciting. We've needed one paraprofessional, and there was kind of a shift that happened. We had a teacher have her baby, which is really exciting. And thankfully, we had an amazing paraprofessional who might be married to one of our school board members step in, and she's doing such a stellar job. I noticed her car was there pretty late last night, so she is like just embracing it, and so that's great, which meant there was an opening for a para as a result of that, and a para that we had hired years ago who was phenomenal,
Amazing.
like messaged me yesterday, "Are you hiring?" And I was like, why yes we are. Your timing is perfect, so that's exciting. So we're good with the hiring, which means now our sub pool is actually looking pretty good. MTSSB, I feel like the kids are. I was thinking back when I looked at my board report this time last year, it was really words like aggression, biting, eloping, and it really was this meeting where we're like, we need a committee to really look at behavior because it was off the charts, and now we have this new group of students. Like, there's really not a lot of behavior to report because they just are they're coming to school really ready to be learners, which is just which is great. So. It's not that they're perfect; there's still misconduct. So we're, that tier 1 work that we're doing. We introduced this year Ollie the owl, which again, like, is such a silly little thing, but little kids, like, they believe in Ollie and whatever Ollie says, right? And he has like a code of conduct wrapped around his neck and this necklace, and we have these like stuffed owls all around. And we have an owl promise, and teachers are doing the owl promise every morning in their classrooms. And it is like magical because the kids, like, even this, I was sitting in the office and I heard a student say, the student was like maybe not walking in the hall. It wasn't like a full-on run. I mean, I was like, well, not a big deal, but this one student was like, "Are you being responsible with our owl promise?" And I was like, wow, like, there's a future principal right there, like, holding these kids to it. So there's this fun, like, just accountability to one another, which is great. So, yeah, I mean, the ECLC is really kind of a joyous and fun place to be. You should come hang out, come visit them. I mean, you get to see them. Rick on the bus. I mean, I could go on and on, but I'll stop. You can ask any questions you have.
We listened to one young boy that rides up front. He counted all the way to 100 today.
Yeah.
Kindergarten.
Yeah.
I was impressed.
That's an end of the year standard, and he's already
got
doing
near,
it. Yeah.
He got near he got up into the 80s, and
Yeah.
you could see him hold up a little bit because he wasn't sure.
Yeah.
And I was listening to him. I was going to help him, and he blurted out 90, and then he went 91.
I got the pattern.
Maybe we can use that data, because imagine, like, the teachers have to assess the students, right? So they have to listen to every one of their students count to 100 at some point in the year. Maybe we can do some of that on the bus. Imagine that 15 times, Rick. 15 kids. Pretty fun. Yeah, they are. Yeah.
If anything's going to happen on that bus, you'll find out about it in 2 minutes, too, because one of them kids will say, Mr. Rick, so-and-so's doing this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So feel free to use Ollie the owl over their heads,
I'll
Maybe
have
you
to
need an
remember
owl
that.
sitting up there in the
Ollie
front.
I have a
owl.
lot of the extra stuffed owls. If you want an owl on your bus, you're...
Thank you, Foundations.
I was just gonna say leftover foundations.
No, this is a new
Little owl on a pointer.
These are beautiful plush, 18-inch, wrapped. Perfect. It's really, it's fun to make little people smile, so. It's nice to be.
All right, so we're up to policies.
We're up to policies. So, usually we are permitted to do immediate adoptions. Typically, and good practice is a first read, second read prior to adoption. However, if we have the plan to implement an early retirement incentive program, then we need to immediately adopt this evening. So if we are comfortable with the policy, procedure, and application that you have in your packet, I would make that suggestion for tonight, because there was such a quick turnaround, and because it's an optional policy, we did go to legal counsel, and I consulted with the union around the contents and like the intent of all of it. So we didn't go to NHSBA because it's optional and right. So so these have been vetted through through legal. The one change that we did make is to if you had. So we didn't want this race to turn in applications, right? You know, people's work days start at different times and people see emails at different times. And so we were really trying to come up with a fair way for staff who are eligible to be able to participate. And so we have it in for 2, but with the board having the discretion at the next meeting, depending on how many people go forward, to go up to 4. Because depending on your position, it might not be a seamless move with what we need versus who is eligible or decides to apply to go. And so we did use time in Barrington as that next layer, so that your dedication to Barrington will get you to the top of the list if we have multiple people that want to participate and qualify. So I think that was the only change made once Lisa put it forward, and then I checked and said, well, does this work? And she said, of course it does, if that's what you guys want to put your your weight on. So that was the shift there. And so we had asked people, for those who, most people don't necessarily know this, but per contract, if a teacher's going to retire, because there are retirement obligations within the collective bargaining agreement, they have to let us know by December 1st, so we could take that into account for the upcoming budget year. But we did waive that because our meeting was supposed to be on the 2nd. Here we are on the 4th, so I've asked people who are thinking of retiring to just hold off until this decision was made. And then let them know again, given the snow day, that they weren't going to be penalized, and we would hold off until after tonight. So those are the only sort of additional things to make sure I shared with you. But that is early retirement. So policy, procedure, and application. And then for first read tonight is, like I talked about earlier, the wellness policy. I would say the significant changes within it, based on, we've been making some slow moves through policy committee over multiple years on having things be a little bit more strict. This is the closest approximation to what's recommended, as we have been. The big changes, I would say, is food fundraisers. You are allowed to have a specified number of bake sales, but you can't have, you can have food fundraisers, but they have to meet the USDA requirements. And then limiting, like I said, those sweet treats and classroom parties. I mean, you don't want to remove it totally, because we all love a good cupcake, but just being a little more mindful. And like I mentioned before, the recess piece. And obviously, I know a lot of people get concerned about that on both sides of the opinion. One, it's like, don't ever remove my child's recess. However, from a teaching and an administrative perspective, if the situation is a problem at recess, like, it's a natural consequence, right? So your child might come home saying, I didn't get recess today, but per policy, they were permitted to have an activity break. It just may not have been with the whole group of peers, because they're being taught to manage that setting in a more positive, manner. So, on its face, it seems very, strict, but there is a little wiggle room within there. So those were the big changes there, and then really making sure that the wellness committee is posting minutes, agendas, meetings, and has the right representation at the table. Those were areas of improvement that we noted as a group. And then you have, that is our only first read. And then from last time, you have EB, GCQ back for second reads.
Going forward, when even though we had it for the other, can we have it back in the packet for the second read, have that policy back as part of the packet?
The original one with the one that's coming forward?
Yeah, so this, so we didn't get copies.
We don't have the, yeah.
Second
not
read,
in
they
here
don't
at all.
have
Not
copies.
there at all.
So that's what I'm saying, can
Absolutely. And yes, they should be in there for second read. Yep, I will make that note.
Does anyone have any questions or comments about any of the policies? Anybody want to do the alphabet soup
I'll
nominations or recommendations?
I'll do it. Do people want to see GB, EB, and GC? Do we want to see those two again before we?
Were there any changes from, can we just, since we don't have copies of those second.
Can we bring them back? Yeah,
back?
Let's bring those two back.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's not-
Yeah,
those
we
aren't
meet in a
urgent.
week and a half. There's no hurry to, yeah, let's leave those off and we'll bring them back since you don't have them. Yep.
Right, so it's not that bad.
that
So I will make a motion to approve for immediate adoption policies GG, GG-R, and GG-R1, and for first read, policy JLCF.
And then to bring
And
maybe,
to bring back at the next meeting for second read, GBEB and GCQ. Got that?
I'll second that.
okay, any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Highly unusual to have something after policy. Policy is usually our last thing on our agenda other than public comment and if we go into non-public, but we can't really vote to implement an early retirement policy and procedure without having the early retirement policy and procedure. So here we are, and really by making that motion and making that vote, we're essentially saying we're going to be cutting 2 positions next year, if, of course, 2 people come forward. Like, maybe nobody comes forward, and then we have to have another discussion, but
Yeah, so I just think we want to phrase that a little differently. By having that, we're not proposing to cut 2 positions. We're proposing to, accept potential early retirements from up to 2 to 4
I'll
people.
make that motion to implement the early retirement policy and procedure.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
We also got an email about a retirement. Are we waiting on that as part of this early, or, because that seemed more like just straight up retirement?
there was a separate email that then retracted it because she went back and reread my correspondence and had misread something and was like, oh, whoops, I need to not put this in right now.
Okay.
So there
I
was
guess I
a,
didn't check my email again after that.
there was a later in the day, I walked up there and was asked for clarification and I said, I need you to go back and read my emails in detail.
Okay.
And
Just
so-
wanted to make sure we weren't missing something there.
Yeah,
All
no.
right, so we are up to the second opportunity for public comment. Any more public comment? Any public comment on those online? Give you a second to raise hands. Easy. I'm hoping Jeff would raise his so I could see it. No, just kidding. All right, so we had already taken off the non-public. One thing I thought we were going to talk about, and I didn't hear in your superintendent report, was an update on grants.
Oh, yep, sorry.
Sorry, I meant to ask that when you were
Bridget
talking.
actually submitted, instead of coming to report just on grants, she submitted a whole report, so they're all in there. I can,
Wanted to make sure we had talked about that. And
Yep.
Okay, all right. So then, that brings us up to entertaining a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right, again, thank you all for your flexibility in attending tonight instead of Tuesday nights.